The other day, I made a post asking you to tell me who you thought would be good guest characters for Mortal Kombat. And you answered. I got hundreds of comments, and now I'm going to curate those a bit and make a little list. As for how the ranking will work, obviously this is personal, but there are 3 primary factors that I'm going to be taking into consideration, with some wiggle room. Them being, is the person appropriate, possible, capable? Appropriate is like SpongeBob. He's good at karate, and he's known to be immune to pain, but he doesn't really fit in Mortal Kombat, does he? Next up is possible, which is there any chance in hell that they could ever possibly be in the game? So as cool as someone like Goku would be, he's not getting in. And lastly is capable. Can they actually fight? Hannibal Lecter is a murderous serial killer who probably wouldn't be that expensive to license. But could you see him going hand to hand with anybody in Mortal Kombat? Yeah, I didn't think so. Again, there's some wiggle room, but that's just the baseline. And here we go is the actual tier list itself. We got flawless. Somebody who is perfect. That there is no real good reason for them to not be in the game other than maybe licensing issues. And we got great. Somebody who would be a really awesome addition to the cast. Who they would be appropriate, who they would fit in well, who you could see them kicking some ass. But maybe not the top tier. Then you've got good. They are perfectly fine suggestions. If they got in the game, I wouldn't be upset. That'd be pretty cool. I might play with them a little bit, and they would fit well. And then you've got which is my way of saying, yeah, I wouldn't put them in. So all that being said, let's get to it. We're starting off with a bang, and that is Doom Guy. This is somebody that a lot of you guys suggested, including myself, like 4 years ago when we were talking about Mortal Kombat 11. Doom Guy would be absolutely perfect. He fits aesthetically. He's got a wide range of weapons, long range and close range. He is no stranger to dismemberment, giving or receiving. He would be a perfect freaking fit going into flawless. And then on the other side of the coin, we have somebody who's also very popular, but this might be a little controversial. We're talking about Pennywise, and I don't think that he would fit very well. I do not like him very much as a DLC character from Mortal Kombat, and it comes down to one major factor. He doesn't fight. Every other guest character in Mortal Kombat is some kind of fighter. Even if it's a little strange, like, they mostly shoot or they're more of an animal, they are still capable of combat. I don't think in any of the It movies or books or TV shows or whatever, has he ever thrown a punch? I couldn't see Pennywise doing a big combo with punches and kicks and throws and uppercuts. It just doesn't seem to make sense. It might be a visual spectacle, but again, it just comes down to I cannot see Pennywise throwing a punch, and I've never been a fan of the idea. I feel like if all those other horror icons hadn't been in, no one would be clamoring. So I'm personally gonna put Pennywise into Next, we got Judge Dredd, one of the coolest looking guys on this list, and somebody with the biggest cult following. He comes from a very brutal land. He's got a long history they could draw from for inspiration for fighting styles, fatalities, etc., etc. So I'm going to take him and pop him into great. Not the best choice ever, but he'd be pretty solid. But going to somebody who would be super solid, Deadpool. Deadpool would have a freaking ball being in Mortal Kombat. Between his guns and stabbing and slicing and murdering and getting dismembered, he's no stranger at all to violence. He's probably been dismembered and physically eviscerated more than any other comic book character ever. He's a complete smartass. You'd probably get Ryan Reynolds to do the voice, and the only problem is that he is in the wrong freaking company. But they got Hellboy and TMNT into Injustice. Who knows? Maybe they can strike up some kind of deal with Fox. So because of that little grain of hope, Deadpool also goes into flawless. Ghost Rider. Really cool guy, really cool gimmick, cool look, but there's 2 little problems. One, Flaming Skull in the same game with Scorpion might feel a little awkward. And then the other thing is his biggest weapon being the penance stare. And I don't think most people in Mortal Kombat would work on them. I think the majority of the cast of Mortal Kombat feel nothing. Feel no remorse about killing. Otherwise, they wouldn't dismember them for fun. He'd be fun, probably like a mix between Scorpion and Takeda, something like that. But I'm going to go ahead and put him into good. And another guy that I don't really have a good reason as to why he's not going to be higher on this list, but bear with me here. John Wick. Quite a few people said John Wick. I can totally see the appeal. The gun fu is badass, Keanu Reeves, everyone loves him, and he is no stranger to gratuitous violence. But there's just something about him that just doesn't click in my brain. I can't see him in a Mortal Kombat game. I'm sure the gun fu would be really freaking cool, but I just can't visualize him being in a Mortal Kombat game. So I'm going to put him into good. Now, someone that I could visualize being in Mortal Kombat, Venom. Venom, I think, would fit really well into Mortal Kombat, and he would have a great time just eating people up left and right, making Reptile jealous. He'd fit really well. I can imagine that he would have a really creative and interesting moveset. I'm going to go ahead and place him firmly into great. And now we're going to get kind of a twofer, because these two are from the same thing, but they were actually submitted by 2 different people. We got Joel Miller and Ellie Williams, both from The Last of Us. Obviously, Ellie would be Last of Us 2. So these two, obviously, we all know where they come from. A real messed up scenario. And they both are not afraid to bash someone's face in. Coming from from their post-apocalyptic hellscape, I don't think it's a stretch to think that they would be able to fit with the Mortal Kombat crew. However, they are just normal people. You could say Johnny Cage is just a normal person, or Sonya's just a normal person, but at least they have like technology and stuff. But at the same time, they are really cool. The games are a lot of fun, a lot of brutality. They could both definitely hold their own in a fight. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Joel and put him into great. I'm going to take Ellie and put her into good. Joel gets put into great just because they could get Pedro Pascal, and that'd be awesome. Next up, we got the Punisher, and hot damn, it really makes you think about how you wish that freaking Mortal Kombat had been bought by Marvel. The Punisher would be a perfect fit into the Mortal Kombat universe. No problem at all mutilating people. There's plenty of story reasons that he would show up and be like, I'm gonna kill you, motherfucker. He's got dozens, hundreds of different weapons and fighting styles to choose from. Thousands of comic book pages to draw inspiration from. He would be amazing. And so I'm putting him into flawless. And I just wish Marvel owned Mortal Kombat when you look at this kind of list. And we're going back-to-back flawlesses because we got Wesker. Now, there's some people in the Resident Evil community who think that Wesker gets a little too much play, that he's not as cool as a lot of people like to think he is, but I don't care. Albert Wesker is awesome. He's got the freaking Venom-like tendrils and stuff. He's quick. You could have an install where he gets pissed off. He's got his gun. He'd be great. Albert Wesker into flawless. Now, someone who's not flawless, but is still pretty cool, Darth Vader. Darth Vader would be pretty badass. He has no moral quandaries about murdering anybody. He's got a lightsaber. He's got telekinesis. He'd be pretty cool. Two little problems. Number one, Disney, obviously. And two, if you really think about it from a gameplay perspective, Darth Vader would just be Space Kenshi. Got a magic sword, got telekinesis. He'd just be Space Kenshi. So it wouldn't be super... So because of Disney's lawyers and because of we basically have a very similar, in terms of gameplay style, character already on the roster, Darth Vader's going to go into good. And another person who isn't going to get super high because of they already have another character who already played very similarly, Michael Myers. Again, this might be another controversial one. A lot of people get mad at me, but bear with me here. What does Michael Myers do, or what could Michael Myers do that wasn't just a copy-paste of Jason? Both big, buff, serial killer, masked men with a sharp, stabby thing. I mean, I'm not saying he's bad. He'd be cool, but I just feel like the only reason that people really want Michael Myers is because you already had Jason, Freddy, and Leatherface. So Michael Myers I'm going to put into good. I wouldn't be mad if he got in, but I'm not begging for him. Now, another white mask stabby man that I'd be more excited to see in Mortal Kombat, Ghostface. Ghostface would be really cool because you've got there's more than one of them gimmick. He's got more of a smart-ass, interesting personality. Ghostface would probably turn out like a mix of Kano and Noob Saibot. That'd be a really interesting combination. And yeah, I think he's got the personality and just bring something really different to the table. So Ghostface, I'm going to go ahead and put into great. Not the best possible choice, but really good. I'd love to see Ghostface. And then we have someone who he would love to be in the game, Eric Cartman. As much as I love to see Eric Cartman's fatality be him sitting his opponent down and explaining how he got turned into their parents and then them harakiri themselves, yeah, probably not actually going to happen. So he's going to go into ink. Now, someone who could happen would be really fucking cool if it happened and is entirely appropriate and possible, Chainsaw Man. This was going to be one that I said. This is going to be one that I brought in. But congratulations to Username, because that I 100% agree. Chainsaw Man would be badass. And it would be timely, because right now Chainsaw Man is as hot as it's ever been, and probably as hot as it ever will be. And again, just look at him. Look at him. That screams Mortal Kombat to me. He would just, he'd be a formidable son of a bitch. So, putting him to flawless. And next up, we're talking about a really interesting one that I had not even considered at all, which is the bride from Kill Bill. I like this idea, because she's got the old school kung fu look. She's obviously very familiar with murdering people. And the Kill Bill movies were very reminiscent of the old school kind of martial arts films that Ed Boon and John Tobias got inspired by to make Mortal Kombat in the first place. But she just doesn't seem to really nail the aesthetic. So I'm going to put her into good, but it's like a high good. It's like in between good and great. I would love to see her in it, but just not feeling super strong about it. Next up, Ash Williams, the one that got away. We're putting him right into flawless. I don't even know if I need to explain this one, but just go watch a couple of the Evil Dead movies, and then you'll understand. It's a freaking shame we didn't get him at MK11, but hey, the Joker turned out pretty good too. A controversial one, but not because I don't like it, but because I do like it. We're talking about Springtrap. That's right, William Afton, the child murderer from Utah. I think Springtrap would be a pretty cool idea. Now, you might be like, hey, you said earlier you didn't put Pennywise in because his whole thing was he doesn't really fight. When did you ever see Springtrap throw a punch? Well, I mean, it's heavily implied that he, stabbed a bunch of children to death. There's been stuff in the supplemental things about him attacking adults. In MK3. In FNAF 3, he comes into your office as a grown man and murders you, and there's been plenty of stuff about him stomping, punching, smashing. So he can kill you. Now, I couldn't see him doing a lot of combos, but I could see him doing like really big, heavy hits, and his fatalities and x-rays and stuff would be really cool. I would love to see a fatality where Springtrap just throws you into a Springlock suit, and then you just go and just blood sprays everywhere, and you just... But the point is, I'm going to put Springtrap into great. I think that'd be really cool. And we got the movie coming out, so cross-promotion. Next, we got a very strange one, Creeper. I mean, I like Minecraft as much as the next guy, but I don't really see what the Creeper would do. Maybe like drop kicks and headbutts, maybe bite you, but all of his fatalities and stuff would just be him exploding. Maybe it could be like Sentinel, where it's like the one Creeper explodes and then another one just walks on the screen and keeps fighting. I don't know, I'm gonna put him into A fun idea, though. Next, we got Jinx. The guy said specifically the Arcane version, but I've never seen Arcane, so I can't speak too highly to it. But Jinx as a character seems like she'd be pretty appropriate. She's got kind of like a Harley Quinn thing going on. I know they made her a little more grounded in Arcane, but point is, crazy lady with guns and explosives. I could see that working. And again, Arcane and League of Legends is huge, so that'd be a big get for them. A little bit cross-promotion. So because I'm not super familiar with the Arcane version, and then, League of Legends is League of Legends, I'm going to put her into good. Next one is Jonesy from Fortnite, which I could see. You got a bunch of weapons to choose from, guns and melee weapons. You would have some kind of building gimmick going on. You could maybe even do like Strikers, where it's like, have Rainbow Bomber and the skeleton guy come in and help. It might be... I'm going to put it in there. Next up, we got Wolverine. Someone who's really cool, really violent, and the wrong company! I feel like I don't need to explain Wolverine too much. Big, strong, titanium, claws, murder, kills people, pretty badass. He's going to go into great. Next up, we got Shredder from the Ninja Turtles. We kind of got him in Mortal Kombat Deception when he was throwing ice instead of turtles, but hey, whatever. Shredder would be pretty cool. I'm a big TMNT fan, but again, it is mostly a kid's thing nowadays. I know in the comics it was very brutal and very adult, but 95% of people who give a half a shit about TMNT don't care about the comics. Let's be real here. The comics are good, don't get me wrong, they're fine. But 99% of the people like the cartoon and the movies and such, so he's going to go into good. He'd be very appropriate, he would fit in really well. I'm sure he'd have a great time shredding some people, but very unlikely going to happen, so major points off, so he's going into good. I'd be down for that, though. Shredder would be awesome. Then we got Dom Toretto from Fast and Furious. I don't think you can kill people with the power of family. As entertaining as the idea of him doing car fu to people is, I'm going to go ahead and put him into A. And for the last of the fan-submitted ones, we've got Isaac Clarke from Dead Space. Yeah, he knows his way around some dismemberment. Between the heaviest boots ever and his wide array of weaponry, and again, he's pretty familiar with, life and death, ripping people apart situations. Isaac Clarke would be a very good fit. You can have, things where, necromorphs come in as strikers, or you can have a thing where he grabs you and throws you into one of the big ones for a fatality. One of his fatalities could be he teleports you to the room where you gotta put that thing in his eye, and he just deliberately fucks up the machine, just in your eyeball. That'd be fun. So he's going into great. And last but not least, here are a couple of my ideas, because it's my video. I'm going to start off with the one I think would be the most appropriate of all of mine, which is Juri Han from Street Fighter. If you were to put a gun to Capcom's head and say you have to put one popular Street Fighter character into Mortal Kombat, it would probably be Juri Han. Either her or M. Bison. But probably not, because he's more iconic. Juri's got the 10-10 engine to help keep up with everybody else on the cast. She's without doubt the most murder-happy of everybody else in Street Fighter. And again, I think she's popular enough to where people would get really excited. But also not too popular to where Capcom would not want her to get ripped apart. Obviously, they would not have Ryu or Chun-Li get put into the game and have this happen to them. So yeah, I'm going to put Juri into F. If Capcom were to ever give a single character to Mortal Kombat, it would probably be her. Next up, we're going with a personal favorite of mine, The Undertaker. That's right, the wrestler. If you're familiar with Undertaker lore, it's not a stretch to think that he would be going around murdering people. He can control lightning and sometimes fire. He's murdered more than a couple people live on television. And canonically, he's an undead wizard, so he would be perfectly at home in the Mortal Kombat realms. But again, he's kind of a weird choice, I acknowledge this, and there's a very low chance of it happening, so I'll go ahead and be fair and put him into good. And lastly, we've got the Huntress from Dead by Daylight. One of the most popular and iconic characters from that game. Between her wood axe and her hatchets that she tosses, in fact that she is a big stocky mommy, I do not think it would be a stretch to think that she could beat the shit out of half the cast in Mortal Kombat. And again, she's one of the most popular characters in Dead by Daylight. And Dead by Daylight, kind of a big game. And she's Russian, so that gets some points. So I'm going to take her, and we'll put her into great. So there we go. That is 29 potential hypothetical Mortal Kombat guests. I would love a lot of these to happen, but obviously probably not going to. But it's a fun little thought experiment, ain't it?
Mortal Kombat crew, I've loved them some horror stuff, and so do I. So I'm going to do a quick little ranking of all the creepy combatants that we've gotten so far. Coming in last place is the original with Freddy Krueger. They did pretty much as good of a job as you could possibly do of putting frickin' Freddy Krueger into a fighting game, but I'm not vibing with him super hard. I didn't play him very much. I know he's super top tier. I personally don't love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. They're good, don't get me wrong, but I don't have a place in my heart. And plus, it's the wrong Freddy. I know it was to help promote the movie coming out at the time, but it wasn't Robert Englund, so he's good in last place. Next up, we got the Xenomorph. He was a great idea. They did a pretty good job with him. Having the one that you play as be, one that had a Tarkatan host was a really smart idea. That was fun. He played really cool, had a lot of really badass animations, and the fatalities were great, but I didn't play them very much. And again, they were very cool, but not personally for me, so they get the number 5 slot. And next up, we got the one that most of you probably would have put at the very bottom, Leatherface. I personally liked Leatherface a lot in MKX. I played him a ton, and I do absolutely love the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Sequels are hit and miss, but hey, that's horror movies for you. Number 3 is Spawn, the longest requested guest character in Mortal Kombat history. You might be like, he's a superhero, he's a comic books character. No, every comic, every movie, something is like action horror, drama horror, so he counts. But they did Spawn perfectly. He was fantastic. He had all the cool animations, and plus, they got Keith David's sweet, sultry voice.
This has Mammon's name all over it. Mammon is dead, asshole.
Number 2 is Maximilian Dude's favorite guest character, the Predator. And like Spawn, I don't think they could have integrated him into a fighting game any better. He was perfect. He was annoying to fight, easy to play, hard to master, fit perfectly because think about a race of headhunting warriors would kill, literally, to get into the Mortal Kombat tournament area because that is a lot of valuable heads to collect. So Predator gets the number 2 slot. And if you know me, and if you can see my new addition to the Wall of Combat, you know that number 1 is Jason Voorhees. I love Jason Voorhees. Friday the 13th is without a doubt my favorite horror franchise overall, and I played a ton of Jason in MKX. Could his fatalities have been a little more inspired? Yes. But overall, I love him. He played exactly like you would imagine Jason Voorhees would play in a fighting game. They put a lot of work and love into him. I love Jason, so Jason is number 1. Mortal Kombat 1 has some of the best fatalities in the franchise's history, and here are my top 5. Number 5 is Darius' fatality.
Fatality.
It is so simple, yet so effective, and so disrespectful. It's without doubt one of the best cameo fatalities, in my opinion. Number 4 is Liu Kang's Black Hole.
Fatality. Liu Kang wins.
This is the exact kind of fatality that I would expect an omnipotent demigod to have. No muss, no fuss, and nothing you can do about it. Number 3 is Garrus' Time Attack.
Fatality.
Do I really need to explain why this one is just so rad? No. No, I don't. Number 2 is Baraka's Feast.
Fatality.
If nothing else, Baraka is a good dad, making sure that his people have a nice hot meal to fill their bellies. And number 1 is Johnny Cage's Car Ride from Hell.
Vroom, vroom. And boom.
Fatality.
This is why he's broke, because he keeps custom ordering Lamborghinis with 20 pounds of C4 in it so he can do this. And of course, I gotta give an honorable mention to Slashers, a staple of the horror genre, and something that the Mortal Kombat crew has shown an affection for. Not only that, but Ed Boon has teased that there may be more on the way. So I've made a tier list of horror slasher villains that I think would fit well in Mortal Kombat, and some that I don't. And an honorable mention to Ash Williams, as he is a horror icon. He is not a villain, and this list is about them. First up, we got one that is apparently very timely, Ghostface from Scream. We talked about him a little bit in a previous video, but I think Ghostface would fit really well. The character of Ghostface has proven themselves capable of taking down fully grown, physically capable men, and there's never just one. So I think there's plenty there to work with Ghostface, so I'm gonna put him up into flawless. Next up is possibly the most requested horror slasher icon to join Mortal Kombat, Michael Myers. And when we're talking just slashers, he's gotta be near the top. He's one of the best, without a doubt. However, there's still that little hitch that I talked about previously of there's not really much that he can do that Jason didn't already do. So that's the only thing that keeps him out of flawless. I'm gonna drop him down into great. Next up is a possibly slightly divisive one, but I'll explain it, which is Nemesis slash Mr. X from the Resident Evil series. They're both big, hulking, no-talking monsters who could easily kill anybody in the Mortal Kombat universe, pretty much. And I say Nemesis slash Mr. X because they would probably go with Nemesis, but you could easily just slap a Mr. X premium skin on top of Nemesis. You know, like Jean-Claude Van Damme going on Johnny. So I'm going to put them up to flawless because that would be really badass. Next up is someone I've seen more than one person mention, but Sadako from The Ring. While yes, she is scary, and yes, she can kill pretty much anybody with very little effort, kind of like someone else we're going to talk about later, not really a fighter. And I feel like that if she were to get decked by half of the roster, she would just explode. And in addition to that, she doesn't really have a lot to offer in terms of, like, you know, assists. So I'm just gonna throw her down to meh. And then we got the original horror icon, Dracula. Natara's here, and they're making kind of a big deal about Verturnus. So why not have the king of Verturnus, I assume, Dracula, show up and show us what vampires are really all about? I'm gonna throw him up into great. Next up is possibly the newest person on this list, Megan from Megan. Killer Robot Girl. Pretty cool idea. She couldn't do anything particularly special, and the movie wasn't a smash hit, but I still think she would fit, so she's gonna go into good. Pyramid Head from Silent Hill. Do I need to justify this one? Do I need to explain anything about Pyramid Head? He's a big, hulking, iconic monster, probably the most recognizable and most feared character to ever come out of a video game. He's going into flawless. Next up is another extremely feared person, Hellraiser. And this guy I think could fit pretty well. He's another character that I don't really see throwing a lot of punches, but he is just magic out the wazoo. I'm sitting here imagining his playstyle being very similar to Shang Tsung from MK11. There's plenty of sins for him to punish in the Mortal Kombat universe, and I think that he would fit pretty damn well. Not perfectly again, because again, he's not really a fighter, but he could definitely do some offensive maneuvers. So I'm gonna go ahead and put Hellraiser into great. Next up is Chucky from Child's Play. Yoda, huh? We want Yoda in Mortal Kombat? No. But Chucky, I think, would do great as a cameo. His whole thing could be like an ambush cameo where he like falls out of the sky or he pops up out of the ground, stuff like that. Chucky would be a perfect cameo. So I'm going to go ahead and put him into cameo. Next up, we got Pennywise. I might be on an island here. There's a couple people with me on this island. I don't think Pennywise would fit very well in Mortal Kombat. Even when like Hellraiser has like, you know, he can summon chains and hooks and his whole thing is scaring children. You know? And it's like, oh, he turns into a giant spider monster. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna play as a giant spider. No, we'd be playing as the clown. So I'm gonna put him down to me. And speaking of clowns, I'm the Clown from Dead Rising. This is a personal favorite because Dead Rising 1 is top 2 or 3 favorite games of all time. I love Adam the Clown. He's creepy. He scared the shit out of me as a kid. He's got dual chainsaws and he's got all kinds of utility, but I'm gonna be realistic as much as I love him. Most of you are probably like, who the f*** is Adam the Clown? So I'll drop him into good just for my personal satisfaction. Next up, again, we got somebody that probably only about half of you will recognize, but the half of you that do recognize will be like, oh, fuck yeah, Candyman. He's like Bloody Mary if Bloody Mary was a big, imposing man with a hook for a hand and that just bled bees. He is such a cool concept. Even if he hasn't got a lot of mainstream recognition, he would be a really cool and really interesting character for a fighting game. I'm gonna go ahead and throw Candyman into great. Next up is Art the Clown. A lot of clowns this list. Anyway, this is somebody that a lot of people like to name drop when talking about horror icons or horror guest characters and stuff. And it's just because those movies, the Art the Clown movies, have a cult around them. 400 people in the world who really love those movies, but they are everywhere and they are loud. That being said, I feel like Art the Clown wouldn't really be a really good fighter. Because let's be real here to you, 300 of you that are in the cult. When you think Art the Clown, you just think about him sawing that lady in half. That's pretty much 95% of the appeal. So I'm going to put him as a cameo. Mostly because his fatality would be brutal. Next up, we got Springtrap. Again, the FNAF movie is coming out soon, and he's kind of like a cyborg, you know? He's a human inside of a robot, not quite the same. He's a big, hulking murderer. He always comes back, he's hard to kill, and he's basically like the Terminator. He might not be a kung fu master, but he could bop you and kill you instantly. And plus, I love FNAF, so I'm gonna put him into Flawless, and you can't stop me. Coming on the end here, and we got the Trapper from Dead by Daylight. He has a pretty good little moveset. He's got his machete thing, he's got the traps, he's somewhat clever, and you know, if you read his backstory, he's not a complete barbarian. He wouldn't be a bad fit, but I don't think a lot of people would be hyped for him. I'll go ahead and put him into good. He would not be bad. Next up, we got Sam from Trick or Treat. And this adorable little demon-looking guy is kind of the same thing as Chucky. He would be fantastic. He's a really cool design, really cool concept. I love Trick or Treat, but he's a little small to, you know, be a fighter. But I think he could do some really cool cameos, and plus I just want to see the fatality where he uses that big sucker and just boom. So I'm going to put Sam down into the cameo category. We're almost at the end. Next up is Slender Man, an old school favorite of boomers like me. Slender Man made an undeniable and extremely unique impact on the internet and the whole concept of creepypastas and scary stories based off of the internet. And he could probably do some pretty cool stuff. He's got the tentacles, he's big and imposing. He's not exactly, again, a fighter. So I'm going to put Slender Man down into good. And topping off with one of the most unique characters on this list, the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. Now this is a guy with a built-in moveset. He's got the truck, he's got the weaponry, and then just his physical body. He's like the Swamp Thing cross the Predator cross a vampire. He would be a really cool, badass addition who I think the MK crew could do a lot of interesting and unique things with. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers and push him up into Flawless. Thank you very much for listening. Do you agree with my list? Who do you think I missed? Blah, blah, blah. Let me know. The other day, I put out a video talking about my 5 favorite MK1 fatalities. Well, enough of that positivity bullshit. Here are the top 5 worst fatalities in Mortal Kombat 1. At number 5, we got Baraka's split decision.
Fatality.
He just stabs you and cuts you. The only thing that makes it any different is the fact that it's kind of at like a weird funky angle. And it's so quick. The only thing that stops it from being too low on the list is the eyeballs being on the tips of the blades is a nice little touch. At number 4 is Sindale's Big Screech.
Fatality.
Okay, now let me describe the fatality to you. I'm gonna scream! And then I'm gonna scream more! And then I'm gonna scream really hard! Aces. At number 3, we got Tanya's Helping Hands.
Fatality.
I got a curtain rod to help me with this one. So she smacks your head around like an owl. He takes this and shoves it in your mouth, and then she summons a pair of mystical god hands to come down and assist her in pushing it 2 inches further down. I genuinely feel like this was one of the last 4 fatalities they designed, and they were just tired. At number 2, we got Havoc's Bone Town.
Fatality.
Someone on the MK crew thought that the coolest part of Havoc was not the whole Cleric of Chaos thing, it was the fact that Havoc could break his own limbs, and it shows. So we're clear, I don't particularly care that Havoc can break his own arm. The cool part of Havoc was the whole Chaos thing, and the self-mutilation was just a nice touch. And at number 1, we've got Shao Kahn's Slammer Slicer.
Fatality.
In a game with black holes, time travel, exploding Lamborghinis, and blowing up the Earth, Shao Kahn's second fatality is this. This would have been a pretty cool fatality for like Mortal Kombat 4, you know, when they were still trying to figure out how 3D models worked. This is possibly the most overbuilt and underwhelming cut you in half fatality in Mortal Kombat history. So yeah, they're not all bangers. I asked you guys who your favorite ninja was. I then took that information, compiled it, and here we are. And just to clarify, when I say ninjas in reference to Mortal Kombat, I'm talking colored mask, palette swap ninjas. So characters like Kenshi and the cyborgs don't count. Now onto the list. There are 15 characters that qualify as a Mortal Kombat ninja, and for the sake of convenience and accuracy, I'm going to be talking mostly in percentages here. Scorpion won overall, getting 16.6% of the vote. However, in second place was a little bit surprising, Rain, with 12.3% of the vote. And then in third place, we had a three-way tie. Noob Saibot, Smoke, and Reptile all had 11.8% of the vote, respectively. Leaving at a surprising 4th/6th place, Sub-Zero, with only 10.9% of the vote. And here's one that surprised me. Ermac only got 3.7% of the overall vote. Now this is probably due to the recent controversy with, you know, the whole face thing, but still. And then on the ladies, Melina won this category by a long shot, but still by not a lot overall, with only 4.7% of the votes. Second place for the ladies specifically being Katana with 1.8% of the vote. Very little love for the ladies, because two of them only got one vote apiece, being Frost and Chameleon. The Frost one really surprised me, because there's a whole cult around Frost. So the overall ranking goes as such. We got Scorpion, Rain, Noob Smoke, Reptile, Sub-Zero, Tremor, Melina, Ermac, Chameleon, Katana, Jade, Scarlet, Frost, Chameleon. Some surprising results, and some I don't understand. Like how Sub-Zero somehow didn't manage to break the top 5, or how Chameleon got more votes than Chameleon, even though she has a way cooler look and better lore. But hey, that's democracy for you. And this is the part where I say that my favorite ninja is Tremor, if we're talking about overall or guys, and Melina, if we're talking about just the ladies. Today, I'm gonna be ranking every game in the Mortal Kombat franchise. No mini games though, because we all know that Motor Combat will go into triple S tier. I'm gonna be going release order. Starting off with the one that started it all, Mortal Kombat 1992. And I'm looking at these games objectively and with time. And that said, the first Mortal Kombat game isn't great. Stiff, clunky, and the NPCs frickin' cheat because they're trying to get you to drop more quarters. That being said, I cannot put the original into bad, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it into meh. But it's like a high meh. Moving on to MK2, an improvement from the first one in every single way. It introduced Baraka, the Lady Ninja Shao Kahn, as well as really cemented Mortal Kombat's legacy of secrets with 3 secret fights. That being said, it's still a bit stiff, and the NPCs still cheat. But MK2 is going into good. But if you're not following it, do that. Do it. Then we got MK3, which was actually kind of a step back from MK2. The new debuting characters weren't as strong as the ones who debuted in 2. There were no secret fights. They dropped Johnny and Scorpion. It didn't play as well, and just overall, it wasn't as good. So I'm going to go ahead and have to put MK3 into meh. But UMK3, however, is a fantastic game. They fixed a bunch of the technical issues, they brought back Scorpion, they debuted Ermac, it was the playable debut of Jade, and more, as they pretty much doubled the size of the roster. Ultimate MK3 is better in every way compared to vanilla MK3, so it's getting the first great. Then we've got Mortal Kombat Trilogy, the MK crew's first All the Warriors game that they did, bringing back every single character from the franchise, making bosses playable, and debuting a couple of cult favorites being the Chameleons and Rain. In addition to that, you can also play as alternate timeline or alternate game versions of characters. Like you can play as Mortal Kombat 1 Raiden versus Mortal Kombat 2 Kung Lao. That said, it's less solid feeling, it doesn't play quite as well as UMK3. It's definitely less balanced, and it's a neat novelty. All that said, still going into great. And now we're going from back-to-back bangers to back-to-back mid with Mythology's Sub-Zero. It was the MK crew's first attempt at a spin-off, and they tried their hardest. It was an okay idea, the story wasn't a bad concept, but it was just all executed pretty poorly. There were some laughs to be had, but it controlled like crap, it was frustrating, and just overall was not a very good video game. It's going down into meh, the memes are the only thing keeping it out of bad. Then we've got the game that almost killed the franchise, MK4. Their first attempt to enter the Z-axis, kind of, as well as the first game to go from actors to 3D models. This game brought in some of the most forgettable characters in the franchise. I bet half of you don't even know this guy's name. I can give them a little bit of leeway, but it's still going down into meh. Special Forces. I don't think I need to go into this one too much. A lackluster, boring, poorly performing, monotonous shooter that was so bad and demoralizing that was the final straw that broke Chan Tobias' back, causing him to leave the company. Special Forces gets the first bad of the list.
And we have another one that sure as hell ain't great with Deadly Alliance. Despite my personal opinions on it, this game sold like hotcakes and basically saved the MK franchise. And despite that, DA is a piece of dog dookie. Mortal Kombat 4 should have been the crash course that the MK crew went through to figure out how the world of 3D animation and controls work, and then the next game was smooth sailing. But no, Deadly Alliance was actually worse. The worst roster of new characters, controls like crap, and every character only has one finisher, a single fatality. No brutalities, babalities, animalities, friendships, stage fatalities, nothing. While it was the origin of Conquest Mode and the Crypt, and some of the new characters were alright, this is probably the worst Mortal Kombat fighting game. I'm putting it down into bad. And then we saw the light. The trek through MK Drek was coming to its end. There was a light at the end of the tunnel, and that light was deception. But this game was no bait and switch, because MK Deception is awesome. The Conquest Mode is basically a Mortal Kombat RPG that puts some modern RPGs to shame. The new roster is between non-offensive and awesome. It controls a lot better, it's a lot more easy to play, and if you had the GameCube version, you were farting through silk. Also, it had 2 minigames packed in with it. Deception was undoubtedly the best 3D era game. I love it, and it's getting the first flawless of the list, and you can't stop me. After the financial success of Deadly Alliance and Deception, the MK crew were given one last shot to enter the world of spin-offs, and we got Shaolin Monks. And sweet was this 30 times better than the last two. Shaolin Monks is everything we could have hoped for in Mortal Kombat spin-off. It feels like Mortal Kombat. You're not going around shooting people, and you can turn around whenever you want. There's like 20 different fatalities you can do. It's got couch co-op, so you can play with a buddy. You can unlock Scorpion and Sub-Zero to go through it a second time for a completely new experience, and let's not forget about that epic intro cinematic. And of course, they have a pretty fun versus mode. Shaolin Monks is not just the best spin-off, but it's one of the best Mortal Kombat games, period. It is also going into flawless. Banger after banger after banger. Armageddon! The game that Smash Bros. Ultimate ripped off, because here we got all the warriors. Boss characters, check. Most forgettable characters, check. Characters that only technically appeared in one port of one game, check. There's also the return of Conquest Mode, which now instead of being an RPG, was a beat 'em up. And the story was actually pretty alright, albeit overshadowed by the concept of Armageddon itself. In addition to having every single character of the MK franchise, you could make your own OC with Create a Combatant. We also got Motor Combat, and the only thing that this game really has against it is a complete lack of fatalities. Yes, all these characters instead got Create a Fatality, which is kind of fun, I guess. Overall, I think this game is really fun, but it's got some issues, and the lack of fatalities is still going into great. And we go from the epic that was Armageddon, the literal end of the Mortal Kombat universe as we know it, with every single Mortal Kombat character in the entire franchise. Where do we go from there? Well, we go to MK vs. DCU, the game that Midway took on because they needed money. It was a really cool concept, but it didn't feel the best. The mash/guess the button things really broke up the flow of combat. It didn't feel or control very well at all. No minigames, no crypt. It was really bare bones. It wasn't terrible. It has a special place in my heart, but it can't go any higher than good, and it's close to a meh. Now it is time for the best of the best. The one that will never be dethroned. Mortal Kombat 9. Best roster, best story, some of the best supplemental content, 300 Tower, Texture Lock, combat codes. The Crypt made its triumphant return, being either the best or the second best Crypt, depending on your personal taste. The story mode was amazing, albeit not flawless, and it really set and established the personalities of the characters that we love today. Mortal Kombat 9 is a fantastic game. One of the best fighting games ever, and it's going in the tippity top of flawless, and I will hear nothing else. Next up, MKX, the sequel to literally the best Mortal Kombat game of all time, and those were some big shoes to fill. But I think they did a pretty good job with it. They followed up the best MK story with a really solid story mode, featuring the best new roster of Mortal Kombat characters. And possibly unpopular opinion here, I think that MKX did a better job character-wise than MK9 with the story, as MK9 was a lot of nostalgia and working with what we already knew about the world, whereas MKX was all about establishing and evolving pre-existing characters or new characters, and I think they did a bang-up job with it. The Crypt in this game was solid. The gameplay was bordering on perfect, with, in my opinion, the best version of the variation system, and we even need to talk about the DLC. So fucking cool. And while it doesn't eke into flawless for various reasons, it's still going firmly into great. Next up, we got MK11, right? Wrong! Mortal Kombat Mobile. It's a fighting game on a phone. It's pretty much what you expect it to be, but they do a pretty good job with it. However, again, still a mobile game. Microtransactions, generic characters to pad the roster, tiny screen. It's not bad. It's not great. It goes into good. Now we go to MK11, one that has a lot of meaning to me personally, but that's a story for another day. This game has a lot of problems. For starters, this was the first one where they took a character from the story mode, pulled them out, and turned them into DLC. This is also the beginning of the multiple timeline plague that Mortal Kombat has now been infected with. The story is fun but nonsensical. The crypt was awesome, but again, it was plagued with grinding and monetization. The Towers of Time were fun but not perfect. The roster was good but lacking. I think that MK11 will go down in history as the most mid Mortal Kombat game of all time. It goes into good. And here we are, Mortal Kombat 1. A new beginning for Mortal Kombat. As they reset the timeline again, Liu Kang is now the architect of the universe. Some favorites are missing, and some old classics are making a big comeback. This is probably the most divisive game on this list, because between the story mode, the roster, the cameos, the DLC, the invasions mode, there is nothing in this game that everyone agrees is just perfect. However, I enjoy it a lot and appreciate that they brought back a lot of 3D air characters as well as some of the other risks that they took. I think they did a bang up job with the story. I feel like this MK1 is going to be one of the Mortal Kombat games that I come back to the most often because I just have fun with it. So Mortal Kombat 1 is going into great. And there we have it. Wait, MK Onslaught. Another mobile game. It's an auto battler RPG that's a perfectly fun time burner. If you're taking a long poo or you're sitting on the bus, it's a perfectly good option for you if you like Mortal Kombat stuff. But it's nothing special particularly. If you know Raid Shadow Legends, it's kind of like that. So there we have it. That is every single Mortal Kombat game ranked. Do you agree? What would you change about the list? Let me know, and make sure that you follow if you love Mortal Kombat.